Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's joined us today. We appreciate you joining for our conversation with Cindy and I today. We're talking about conflict. There was a lot of interest in today's webinar, and so we look forward to sharing some of our Berkman insights with you. But first, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves for the audience so you can get a little bit more familiar with who we are. My name is John Pryor. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Berkman International. I joined Berkman in September of 2022, so just over a year ago. Prior to that, I spent 2 decades primarily in healthcare with different leadership roles in operations and technology. And so being at Berkman has been a great experience. And I think my transition into Berkman has been greatly helped by the use of the Berkman method and our own products, and really had a great opportunity to learn more about myself and more about my colleagues by using the Berkman products. So, but I am in no way an expert on Berkman yet. So today I have with me Cindy, who I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with. And Cindy, why don't you go ahead and give us your background?
Thanks. Yes, I went to the University of Alabama. I'm from LA, as we say, Lower Alabama. And I then studied business and went to work for Procter & Gamble, largely in sales, did some internal strategic planning work for them. And 10 years later, left to start a nonprofit and got fascinated with the difference between leadership at kind of an authoritative P&G style and an inspirational nonprofit leadership style, and started my own business over 18 years ago now. And our team works on how do you help teams be high performing. And in my journey, the Berkman has been an amazing gift to bring teams together, help with executive coaching, help companies bring strategy to life. And there's not a day goes by that the Berkman just doesn't blow my mind. So it's an honor to be here talking about conflict with you.
Sounds great. Well, so as we dive in here today, we have a pretty simple agenda. We're going to start off by talking about some of the common causes of conflict. We're going to compare and contrast what unhealthy conflict looks like and then what healthy conflict looks like. And then we're going to share how Berkman and using some personality insights can help kind of keep you on the healthier side of conflict. And then later on, we'll get into some Q&A. And so if you have questions now or throughout the webinar, you can just go ahead and click the little box and send your questions in, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Cindy, I think your fan club has already been sending in hellos and good wishes. So,
Thanks.
all right, so let's go ahead and jump in with kind of the definition of conflict. Pretty basic, right? But when we think of conflict, we see it all over the place. But specifically in the workplace, Cindy, why don't you talk to me a little bit about what are some of the causes of conflict that you see?
Yeah. The whole purpose behind conflict is that I am locked into what I believe. And I think that my perspective of the situation is right. And, you think about the neuroscience behind that and how important it is for our brain over time to have come to a place of, I got to this belief for a reason. I made mistakes that led me here. I had positive feedback that led me here. And so when you walk into a relationship, the way that we're going to build trust is we're going to navigate through how we see things differently. But I remind myself and people all the time, my perspective is 100% right. I mean, I came to it with a lot of sweat and tears over the years, but so is yours. And perspective can come from where you grew up to how tall you are to what kind of family you're in, political. I mean, everything under the sun can build your perspective. But if you're 100% right and I'm 100% right, then how do we come together and, for the sake of the team, find clarity over conflict. And that really is the heartbeat behind conflict. I love conflict, love it, because I know that that's what's going to push a team to get to a better place. And when I see conflict with people, I'm like, good, let's go. I mean, yeah, we all get that chemical rush from it, but we got to learn to lean into that and appreciate it for what it is doing to help us grow versus, go into our limbic system and fight, flight, or freeze and run from it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you almost have to, ask yourself if you're not feeling conflict, if you're not feeling the tension, where is it and what am I missing?
You're definitely missing it if you're not seeing it. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be intense because if we learn how to work together, this is why I love the neuroscience that goes with human behavior. Our prefrontal cortex is all about being hopeful and being curious. And all of a sudden, if I'm okay and I'm enough and I believe in how I feel about it, but I'm hopeful and curious about other people and their perspective, I mean, the sky's the limit on what you can learn. And gosh, what would life be if we had no learning? It'd be pretty boring.
That's to keep it, I guess, as simple as you can.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a reason why we had the interest in this topic, and in one, why we're talking about it too, and two, why it generated the interest from customers and prospects. And that is because, a recent study showed that Americans spend just shy of 3 hours a week in their work week engaged in conflict, right? And so, if you want to put a big number on that, it's, $359 billion of basically payroll expense, right? And so, like we talked about, conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, right? But if we're taking that much of our resources that are allocated towards moving our businesses forward, but it's not being done in a productive manner, and we're not managing that appropriately, then, it becomes a misallocation of resources, right?
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but part of what it really strikes me about the thrill of winning is that when you got a team and you're moving forward and you're able to navigate because we understand one another, then we can get to the winning faster. But when we're holding that conflict in and we're not getting self-aware, we're not learning how to self-regulate, then, literally that's where cancer and disease and heart attacks come from. So it's not just the lost value to the business of time in the conflict, it's the lost value to us in our life and our health and our relationships with other people. And so much of this, I think, is a paradigm shift for us of, all right, what can I learn from this situation and this person? I don't have to buy into everything they're saying, but if I don't take their feedback as power so that I can get better, then I'm really missing out on this great opportunity to explore new avenues of success. And who doesn't love success? So, it's that self-awareness that is the starting place. You got to get grounded in who you are.
100%. So let's talk a little bit about unhealthy conflict. So what are some of the things when you're working with a prospect or a potential client or something that you listen for, where you're like, there's tons of unhealthy conflict there?
Yeah. You with our brains, we go to the limbic side of our brain, the feeling side, and all 5 of our senses are attached to that feeling side of our brain. So we go there before we ever go to the logic side. And so you can feel it. It's whether or not, like, I am definitely one that doesn't go to emotion first to process something. But when you're sitting there and you're watching people with the body language tells us everything. And you've got the lean back, the cover the face. And it can be over small things. It can be as simple as, I don't know that I agree with where you got those numbers from, much less I'm really angry at you for how you spoke to me. But if we watch for conflict, it's always there. And it's really about whether or not we're able to storm through it. I mean, I think a lot of us know Cartman's work in forming, storming, norming, performing, and then he throws in adjourning, but it doesn't rhyme, so I leave it out. And But if the storming leads to the norming out, so that I know it's safe for me to walk in and connect with you. One of the things that I try to remind people of is when we get activated and we go into that adrenal gland and we pop our adrenaline, adrenaline is intended to be our stupid chemical because it is to get you to fight, flight, or freeze. It is not to get you into your higher level of thought so you can problem solve. And when we kick that off, we literally dumb ourselves way down in what we're trying to do. Um, so a lot of conflict. I'll just go back to it's why I love the Berkman so much because I can see how I operate day in, day out on my usual behavior in comparison to other people. And no right, wrong, good, bad, but thank heavens we're all a little bit different. Again, life would not be very fun if we were all robots. But then my need, only I can manage my need. I have to learn about my needs and figure out ways to engage with people. And I think conflict comes when I don't have an understanding of what my need is. So I feel vulnerable in a bad way that you're going to say something that's going to be unfair to me or a truth I don't want to hear about myself. And so it's being aware of that. A couple of months ago, I made an idiot out of myself. I was in Target and I was all up in my brain. I was trying to buy some things to put together a training session. And I look over and there is a long-term acquaintance of mine. And I immediately, without thinking, I ducked behind the end cap. I mean, like literally like a little kid. Like I don't want to see him. He's a wonderful soul, but he's got a bad habit of this kind of humble success. I just can't believe how successful I am. This is like, wow, look, it's so great. And I wasn't in the mood for it. I was like, I'm showing my age, but Wile E. Coyote going from end cap to end cap, trying to run from him. And I got up to the front of the store and I'm literally looking across the cash registers at the glass front doors. And I'm thinking, okay, do I run? Is he going to see me? I'm all crouched over. And I just stood there and I was like, oh my God, Cindy, you teach this stuff for a living. I teach communication skills, but I was activated. I went into fight, flight, and freeze, ditched and dashed on my cart. And all of a sudden I stood there and was like, I know 20 ways to handle the situation. As simple as walk directly to him and say, hey, how are you? I'm in a big hurry. Good to see you. So that I've spoken to him and I can keep going on. But this is where conflict starts, is in this limbic system of, I just started breathing differently because my brain hasn't caught up to my emotions. So learning conflict becomes such a powerful tool.
Yeah, I often say, like, if only adrenaline was our timeout button and not our fight and flight button, right? Because when you're in there and you're stressed and you feel whether it's disrespect or that you're not being acknowledged and you kind of have that reaction. How much better would it have often ended up if you would have just called a timeout, regrouped, and figured out how to kind of get back into what we're also talking about today and hoping to spend more time on it is the healthier side of conflict.
And healthy. I do. I tease people all the time because in my head I have two go-to things for myself. One is back when they taught us all in kindergarten about fires and they said stop, drop, and roll. And so in my head, when I feel that chemical adrenaline, ooh, I'm over my skis. And because I'm so high assertiveness, that can be dangerous. I stop and go, okay, stop, drop, and roll. Like stop, drop underneath this, roll through your head where you are. And the other one is I'm a big believer in the adult timeout. I literally, if I'm activated, can say, hey, can we take a quick, 10-minute break here and regroup in a few minutes so that I can walk away. Listen, the bathroom stall is an office for conflict. Nobody's going to come in your bathroom stall with you. So you can just sit in there and get your stuff together. So withdrawing is your forever friend so that you can get back into your rational thinking.
So what are some other ways to, whether it's in just a one-on-one setting or in a team setting, that you can kind of pivot into whether it's, more meaningful
Yeah. Yeah.
collaboration, accelerating performance, with better idea generation. What are some of the things that you've best practices?
One of the most critical best practices to build trust is really allowing the team to know the same communication skills, like helping them look at like Harvard's 5 steps, so that if I come to you and say, hey, can we walk through 5 steps, your story, my story, our joint story, brainstorm new story, that's calming, because I know I'm going to get a chance to be heard, and I know that I have to stop and listen to you. And so that just allows your whole system to go, yeah, let me learn and be hopeful and curious here. Another one that I really push all of my teams to do is you have to agree that you're going to say the last 5% of whatever it is that's rolling around in your head. And only high performance teams are willing to do that. And when we sit in meetings often and we think, are you kidding me? You are late with that, but we aren't allowed to say it. That's really frustrating, because the highest you're going to go as a team is your lowest common denominator. I mean, if you're a work group, that's different. A work group isn't interdependent, but a team where the real brilliant work comes out of it is you have to be able to say, hey, I've got something that I want to talk with you about. And by saying the last 5%, it's not I get a right to scorch you right now. It's not like, oh, it's free for all, I get a free punch. It is, I have your back. And I'd rather in this safety room here say something to you that I want you to think about. And then I'm going to come back, and I've said it, you can do with it what you want. This isn't me controlling you or forcing you. This is me having your back. And when we leave here, I'm not going to be tempted to say that to somebody else. I'm not going to watch and think in my head, oh, I saw you fail, I knew it was coming. But I make that commitment to this team. And you see that trust level go, because I have committed to the last 5%. And now I'm not waiting for somebody to bring up that thing. It's on me. And if I don't, then I am breaking the commitment that I've made to this team.
Well, if we try to win big through better sports metaphors, it's really about leaving it all out on the field, right?
I love it. Yeah.
And when you go away and that thing's just eating at you, and it's like oftentimes the other people in the room were thinking it, right? And that this comes back to psychological safety, right? Can we say the things that need to be said when they need to be said?
Yeah.
Because in today's world with the business environment moves so fast, right? We really don't have time to not be productive. We're exploring some of the challenges with that at Berkman right now, where we compressed ourselves into a 4-day work week. And we're spending a lot of time thinking about, it's like, okay, well, where we used to be able to ideate for a long time, or kind of take longer time with things, we're figuring out how to be more efficient at what we do. But then again, that can also breed different aspects of conflict. And if you don't deal with it correctly, then
yeah, if y'all move your work week down and y'all still have 2.8 hours a week of conflict, best learn how to speed that up and get to a place of trust, because it's not just the 2.8 that we're in conflict, it's the come down of the body trying to regroup from that is the critical piece of the lost efficiency. And I mean, that number is unbelievably high. When you shared that, tell me again, it's how many billion?
359 billion with a B.
Dang. I'm going to start charging different for consulting.
Think how many great businesses you could start with that much money.
Change the world. Yeah.
So, I think in one of the quotes that, I think is kind of nice to put, a final point on this issue is Thane Bellomo said, when leaders shut down disagreement, they shut down the very purpose of a team. And, everything we've talked about today is that, disagreement is really the representation of a lot of different perceptions or perspectives at the table. And that's really what's going to help propel you forward if you can manage that in a healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's powerful. I mean, I think about any relationship you have in your life that is a highly trusted relationship. I really believe that the way that that trust came about is that we worked through hard things, that we saw that there was a difference, we agreed on a new state, and we held that state in esteem with one another. It may not be perfect for me and it may not be perfect for you, but we agreed to it and now we maintain it. And those positive surprises, we are maintaining it. We're doing what we said we'd do. That is the builder of trust. But when when I'm frustrated because I can't work through that, and I just shut down and don't bring my best, that is, I mean, don't bother to be on the team. Conflict is mandatory. And so us being able to reframe it and go, I'm excited to learn how to keep myself calm and work with you and learn from you to get to a new place. And it transcends all levels of conflict, because basically if we go backwards and try to do well, this, I am right and you're right, no, you're wrong, I'm right, then basically what we're doing is just getting shut down in our memory bank, and there's no way to go back and rewrite history of what happened. In fact, I mean, I think we're seeing in our country right now that a lot of people who wrote the books only told their perspective. We're seeing a lot in our country about it's not exactly what we've learned about how, healthy and fair America has been. And so the only power we really have in it is the ability to move forward in an agreement and hold that in esteem, that we will keep that agreement with one another.
Yeah, so we actually have a poll question along those lines, which is on a scale of 1 to 10 for those of you in the audience today. How would you rate your current skill at shifting unhealthy conflict into healthy conflict? And Cindy shared some great points today, and maybe you can see about yourself and think to some recent examples of where you've knocked it out of the park, or maybe wish you had that do-over again. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching the election night here with the balloting coming in. So we'll get back to those results here in a little bit. But I do want to shift into, we talked about one of this is like, realizing that you have a different perception, and Berkman does have a way to measure that. And so we're going to go through a couple of examples, fictitious people, of course, but we're going to start with two people and just look at how they see the world from one of the 9 components the Berkman measures. And so we're going to look first at the usual side of the scale, which is how you normally show up. So Cindy, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, well, Catherine and Sandeep in a meeting need to be hearing themselves talk. They have no problem sharing their ideas. In fact, one of the things I love about the high assertiveness is that they're willing to just bat around ideas. Oftentimes, I always say that this is the in your head on the low side and out your mouth on the high side, because everybody's dominant in how many thoughts they have, but assertiveness is how much of it is coming out of your mouth. And what you have to watch with high assertiveness is that you can sound like you mean business when really you're just brainstorming. So Catherine and Sandeep talking would have to make sure that they said, hey, I'm just brainstorming, because they're definitely going to say it, bring out their opinion, push back if they don't like it. So together in their usual behavior, they're functioning pretty well. But then we have to look at need behavior.
Yeah, so let's look at the needs.
Yeah, so need behavior, we see on the surface, what we're seeing in them in a meeting is we assume that they like the debate. And now all of a sudden we find out that Catherine really likes a democratic environment. Catherine likes to feel like, okay, I can speak up about it, but I don't need people powering back up with me. And so what's going to happen with them in this is that Sandeep, unless he understands that she has a different score, he's going to go about his life saying, I speak up, and I need to have people speak up to me. I'm just like everybody else in the world because I am this way, and I think everybody else is my way too. And so all of a sudden, if Catherine pulls back, Sandeep is going to be like, what is her problem? Is she in a mood today? Or, what, like, I wish she'd snap out of it. I don't know what her deal is. So, that this is where studying those needs, oh my gosh, they're so important because I mean, basically, law of negative inference. When we don't understand something, our brain goes to safety and we put a negative inference on it. So he's not going to say, oh, sweet Catherine, let's be nice to her today. He's going to go, what's Catherine's problem? Um,
Well, and
and
that's the challenge with needs is that unless you have a way to measure them, you'll never see them, right?
yeah, I mean, that's where this tool for me, I mean, clearly I've run thousands of Berkmans. It changes relationships. I've done married couples. I even had a divorced couple get back together after I went through their Berkmans with them. Yeah, I've done kids. I mean, teenagers all the way to people trying to figure out what they're doing in retirement. People figuring out why they don't love their job. And it's just such a life-giving thing all of a sudden to have a way to see, oh, no wonder that wasn't working for me. Well, heck, I can learn how to change that. I can communicate what my needs are and help people learn to work with me.
So when are some of the most kind of when you kind of go to in and you're working with one of your corporate clients, like what are some situations where you really lean on the assertiveness component?
Yeah. I mean, every single thing comes back to the assertiveness, because if I've got a team and we're trying to get the team to come together, one of the things we have to be aware of is that the high assertive usual behaviors are going to talk, and the low are going to stay up in their brain. And so this creates the meeting after the meeting where the high people think we've come to a conclusion because we talked it all out. The low people never got to speak up and they weren't comfortable because they're still thinking about it. So the team thinks, the high people think we've made a decision. And then after the meeting, the lower people are much more comfortable going and talking to somebody one-on-one, and all of a sudden they've got a better idea that didn't come out of the meeting. And so I really work with people on do the round robin. I don't know where that term came from in my background, but round robin is stop before you're too far down in the discussion. Every person has to take a minute and weigh in with what they're thinking so that we start getting an idea of all of the ideas in the room. And because otherwise you're just going to continue to have this miss of not all the ideas are on the table, so you're going to back up and have to redo things you thought were decided on because we didn't pull out. I challenge people with high assertiveness to use their assertiveness to pull out other people. And then I also have a phrase that I use that is own your airspace. If you're in a room and there are 10 people, you get 10% of the airspace. And so the low scoring people have to own their 10% of the airspace in talking. The high people have to back it down and they still only get their 10% of the airspace in that room. And it just helps people when we get these sticky terms, say the last 5%, own your airspace, then it's so powerful because we're able to then cut to the meaning without having a big discussion.
Right. So let's talk about what the room looks like now that we've expanded beyond Catherine and Sandeep, and we've added in Josh, Matt, and Greg. What are some of the examples you were just talking about? How can they best organize themselves?
Yeah, so this is, you start seeing the critical aspect of everybody having a chance to speak up, because in usual behaviors, all of a sudden you've got the 3 people joining the team all lower than the 2 people who may be, co-team lead, or I don't love co-team, the team lead or positions of authority. And so we're going to really have to provide situations. One is a great tool for an agenda that you put on the agenda. This is pre-discussion. Here's the decision date on this so that those low people get to walk away and get their ideas together. because they have a hard time speaking up before they get their ideas together. Whereas high people, we just throw it all on the table. And so for this team, with those three people coming in that are low, then you're going to really have to make sure that you're utilizing time to share the information, any pre-reading, everybody share ideas, and then we're going to come back and make a decision later. And then in terms of needs on here, again, you've got this wide variety that if it depends on, who is team lead, but let's say in this case, Sandeep is team lead. So he's in the position of authoritative, responsibility, power, if you will. Sandeep is going to be telling people what to do. And he's got three people on his team who are like, seriously, back off, dude. You're coming across so strong that I just don't respect you. You don't care about me. You don't listen to me. I go in, with my heartbeat up in my throat, and I'm not able to really listen or feel comfortable sharing because you're just gonna tell me what to do. So, in this case, Greg is the only one that is going to really appreciate that Sandeep is super clear with him about what's expected of him. The others are probably going to risk feeling micromanaged.
Yeah. And so, I know we talked earlier in the conversation about, the need, business moving fast and the need to be more efficient and everything. But, especially as you highlighted, kind of when we add people to the team, that might be a time where we need to kind of slow down to speed up, if you will, because the new people coming into the team are going to have, different usual styles, different needs. They're going to be somewhere else on the change journey, right?
Very much. Very much. I just had a conversation yesterday with an organization, and they've got an MD on their team who is a super low, blue, yellow on the introverted side. And the conflict is that because she's in a position of perceived power, authority, I mean, we all have white coat fear basically for doctors. And they're not pushing back on her, but she's not communicating. And it's leaving everybody on the team feeling like it's not okay to bring up with her some of their expectation. But by not doing it, they're shutting down the whole clinic. And we talked about normalizing feedback. And I always joke, feedback is not always a gift, but it is power. And so I want to learn what your feedback is, because sometimes your feedback's more about you than it is me. But if I don't know it, then I'm not able to have the opportunity to grow, help you grow, and do something bigger, better than what we do individually.
So maybe another way to look at the team that we're looking at on the board here. I know, we talked a lot about, Sandeep, and if that's the team leader as their way of doing things, what can the people on, the lower end of the needs scale towards like the more democratic environment, when we talk about kind of owning our personality and trying to see the world differently, like what are some of the things that those people can do based on the data that they have here?
Yeah, the power in the question is so incredible. I call it I have all these sticky things because I want people to be able to use them. But what is the highest and biggest question? The adult learning model is, if I'm asking my own question, I'm way more likely to learn. And if somebody comes to me and asks me a question that they're really wanting to learn from, then I can hear. And so for those folks on the lower side of their need, to really be able to ask good questions and, okay, I understand that. What about this? Because that's going to help them engage in the conversation and create that democratic environment of participating. And it's my goal that every team I find has Berkmans, because, in this case, to help them understand that while Greg is going to sit there and be really quiet, if we're not really clear with Greg what we're expecting from him, he's going to be really frustrated. He's not one to read your mind. Whereas with look at Matt here. Matt will speak up when he has something to say, but in getting his need met, he is going to have to say some things like, hey, I do really well when we're able to discuss it and agree on how we're going to work together. And I always share in training that, looking at their needs, the lower ones, I would go to them and say, hey, we've got this big project due. Last time we made this mistake, it made me anxious. So I totally trust you, but I do need to know that you're checking in with me at least every other week on where we are. Are y'all good with that? On the high end, because they need a lot of, what's going on, I'd say, hey, Sandeep and Greg, last time we missed that big part of this. We're not going to miss it again. So let's get really clear. Let's meet once a week. If you need a midweek check-in, we can do that. I want to stay on top of the fact that this is what's expected. And for Josh in the middle, I would work with Josh on, Josh, what are you going to need? When do you need to talk this through? What are the issues that are going to concern you so we don't miss this key part of it? And so it's just, for me as a leader, it is the cheat sheet of how these people want to, or not want, need to be communicated to, so that I'm not treating them all as the same person.
Yeah, and even more importantly, not necessarily just treating them how they show up, because this data set we're looking at here is I think representative of what we see in the U.S. workforce, and that being that a lot of people, the way they show up, the way they present themselves, doesn't meet what their needs are, right? And so you've really got to unpack that and get to know each other through data, right? It maybe sounds impersonal, but it's probably one of the most personal things you can do with your teammates, is to really understand and come at them with from an angle of curiosity.
Curiosity and compliments will save the world. I mean, that's, who doesn't like somebody to say, hey, I know you're really good at this. I don't understand how this is going to work on this project. Can you help me see it? I mean, we all, like, even I like people to be very direct with me, and I like people to be very clear. But when you start in that calm entry to it, instead of coming and saying, this report SUX, and we are not going to be able to, take this report, what are you thinking? Well, you just put my stupid chemical in high drive, and you want me to now give you my best thinking. That's on you, dude.
Yeah, we're headed towards unproductivity or unproductive times. So, well, thank you so much today for your insights. I wanted to we're going to get to Q&A in just a second, but I did want to say, if you're out there and you're with us today and you're interested in what you've heard, and want to talk to our sales team and explore how Berkman could make an impact either in your organization or in your consulting practice, our sales team would love to talk to you. The component that we talked about today is one of the 9 components that we measure and present within our signature package of reporting. And all of our insights are driven off a single assessment that takes about 30 minutes to complete. And then you can kind of unlock a treasure trove of information and reports. We do actually have relevant today a report just based on how you handle conflict. And so, in terms of the tool and the application, I think I've recognized that just in the last 15 months coming on board to Berkman, how effective it has been to help us get oriented with new leadership. So going to the questions and back to the poll, it was interesting. Pretty spread out. Nobody super high, nobody super low, kind of a cluster between kind of 5 and 8 out of 10. And so, I think it's great, right? You talk about self-awareness and recognizing that we have opportunities to continue to improve upon how we show up and how we contribute are good things. So The first question that we have is sometimes team conflict results from political differences or other external reasons. How might a supervisor refocus a team to work on the opportunity despite these external differences? And this is actually a question that came in in the registration process at a time. So
Oh, just sit and argue it for hours on end. There's nothing better than politics and religion to make friends. Um, it's actually, in my mind, a very easy answer. We as human beings want to follow a vision, and we want to be engaged in something that gives purpose and meaning to our lives. And when a team lead keeps that vision and purpose and success measurement out there in front of people, we'll do anything. I mean, we can work with people complete opposite of who we are, and then stay focused on that vision, our core values that help us navigate that. If it's a real problem, I think the team has to open up and have an agreement of this is a safe space for us, that we're not going to go down those pathways, and I'll make a commitment that I'll respect you, but I won't have that conversation. And so we're back to, what is the new future way that we can handle this? And, election seasons, it brings it out in everybody, no matter what side of the fence you are. But we just have to understand that the reason that we came together is the important place for what we're doing together. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I've ever convinced anybody to go over to my line of red or blue on political topics. Have you ever swayed someone on that?
I don't know. I can't say that I've ever really pressed that hard on it. So
Yeah,
I just try and figure out how to respect them for who they are.
definitely.
So another interesting question that we got is what do you do when it's the leader causing the conflict?
Ah, quit. No, I'm kidding. Kidding. When it's the leader, and you have to ask the question, are they receiving feedback? It is a hard thing with a leader that has blind spots, and they're a challenge to work with. But I do there take this the right way, hear me out. Every good con artist that hits you up on the street always says, hey, can you help me out? I'm down on my luck, or my car broke down, I just need money for gas. But the reason they say, hey, can you help me out, is because it trips the sympathetic nervous system to relate. And so before you're even thinking, oh wait, I'm getting conned, you're pulling out your wallet to give them some money. And you have to override that and go, wait, they're panhandling me, and figure that out. But when you go to somebody and start that conversation of, hey, can you help me out? When we're in a meeting and this comes up, I'm trying to own my own behavior, but I really shut down. And would you be open to having a conversation about that? And just let me share my perspective. And it may not be today, it may be sometime in the future, but I'd really be open to doing that. And what that does is it clicks the sympathetic nervous system, but the other thing it does is makes them curious. And so there are a lot of times in coaching that I'll say, hey, at some point, if you're up for it, I have some feedback around this I'd like to give to you. It can be in 6 weeks, but I just have a couple of thoughts that are in my notes. And of course, the person then is like, what? You got to tell me now, and so using those communication tools, difference between management and management, everybody wins. Manipulation, one person wins and one person loses. And I think we get caught in that we have to be the same, but that's why we have behaviors. We can use that usual behavior to really toggle our ability to work with other people. And I think it's respectful to ask somebody, would you hear my point of view? And could I share some feedback when you are ready? That is way more respectful than quiet quitting. I call it RIP, retired in place. Or that you talk about the boss behind their back, or you go blast them, or they don't know they have a problem and you go to HR about them, because now HR is triangled in. So
Right.
at least try. And if you're not hearing one another, just politely say, I still don't feel like I'm being heard. Is there somebody you trust that could help us have this conversation?
So two more questions. Talk to me about the connection between stress and conflict, and how can Berkman help manage that?
um, so, I mean, essentially, it's what we've been talking about. Stress is stress is such a powerful tool. Like, I mean, things, anger, depression, fear, those things are such a gift to us because they're our symbol and signal that something's wrong. And we know that when we ignore them, we can spiral out of control. And so stress behavior has this huge power to it. But if we live in stress behavior and we don't go back and get our needs met, then we're crunchy and we're not easy to get along with and we're not thinking straight. And all of a sudden, even if we try to resolve the conflict, we're functioning in our less than position of intelligence. And so, I mean, there's just a one for one that if you come home in a bad mood and kick the dog and yell at the kids, there's going to be conflict. And it's because you weren't self-regulated and getting your own needs met. And, and I tell people all the time, I mean, going back to the boss thing, if you really work in an unhealthy environment and it's tearing you up, America is amazing. We have the right to go get another job. We have the right for our managers to work for us. They are paid to help us be successful. And if they're not doing that and your organization isn't helping solve that, and you have tried, please sharpen up that resume. Go make your impact. I mean, I tell when companies are paying me happy sums to coach somebody, and it turns out that they're just in a situation that's not going to resolve, I'm like, I don't care who's paying me. You have a right to be happy. You have a right to a good leader. So don't live in stress. I'll tell you, if we have a minute, I want to tell you a real quick story. I have a good friend whose father um, had been a civil engineer for a small town in North Carolina, loved his job, got Alzheimer's. And Mark said in the years of Alzheimer's that his dad woke up every day, and he'd had a period of time of about 3 years when he had a really abusive boss. I call it the PTSD, corporate PTSD, when a boss is allowed to be abusive. And he said, Mark said in his dad's Alzheimer's, he woke up reliving those 3 years over and over and over again. And I think about that all the time. And I think, I don't want the people that I care about and that I'm helping succeed wake up if they end up with dementia or Alzheimer's and relive corporate PTSD and an abusive boss over and over again.
Right.
Nobody has that right to do that to us. So I got on my soapbox there, but you can tell I love what I do. So
Yeah. So another question is, how do you work with a peer that gets very emotional when conflict arises? And I think, this is something for me. Like, I'm very sensitive to, like, other people's feelings and stuff. And, like, I always say it's like, I reward, I recognize, I celebrate in public, but
mhm.
all the other messy stuff, like, let's figure out how to handle it one on one. And
Yeah.
I think that's a point where you can kind of unpack the situation a little,
Mm.
less, less publicly, figure out a good setting. Maybe it's, you've got to get out of the office and talk about this for a while, get some fresh air. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. Again, can y'all just make sure the whole world has a Berkman? Because this, knowing that about you, you just inform people of the best way to operate with you. I mean, what a gift to give to other people. And the when that is important to someone, a couple of things, basic things like a walking meeting. Research says that we're able to problem solve at like 20 something percent higher. I think it's 26% higher when we're walking and talking with somebody. And so just the shoulder, I always think shoulder to shoulder with somebody is the way that I like to work, because I don't want to go face to face in, like, you're right, I'm wrong. So shoulder to shoulder working on something together as you're talking is great communication because it keeps you calm. Another one is, I say to people, objectify the situation. Don't make it about a person. Sit and put the problem mentally in the middle of a table and talk about the problem. Don't talk about the person. And so if I'm having a hard time, make crap up that you don't ever call people back or email them back. It'll take you a week. I know that's not you for sure, but let's just say, then I'm not going to come at you knowing how you're wired and go, John, are you stupid? I'm going to come and say, hey, I really want to work together on what we think the best way to respond to people are as a team, and what's working for people, what's holding people back from doing it, like what's a reasonable time frame. And so I've left you and your self-worth and your ego and your need for your image to be managed out of the conversation. And I put the problem in as the conversation that I'm solving with you. Um, and I think that works for everybody. I don't think that it works just for those of us. I'm a 6 on my self-conscious needs. So when people kind of beat around the bush with me, I get a little anxious, like, just say it. You're driving me nuts. But even when people come and do that with me, I'm calm. I bring my best thinking to solving a problem versus being told I'm wrong or being blamed for something.
Right.
We are a chemical reaction with one another. It's me in Target seeing somebody across the way and turning into an imbecile. I mean, if we can manage those chemicals, then that's the win.
So last question for today, and then we'll wrap up. And that's, how do you handle it when you're working with two people and you've made some suggestions for how they're gonna they can patch things up and get into healthy conflict, and they just are like reluctant, they don't do it.
Yeah.
What's your secret there?
Easy. We do what we want to do. All of us do. If you want to be fit in a pro rower, you did it, and you like that you did it because you wanted it. And if I want to get along with somebody, I'll figure out a way. And so I bring people back to, what do you really want? And it's not about getting along with this person. It's about, why are you here? Why did you join this company or this organization or this vision? What's your purpose in all of this? And then, is this behavior helping you get to your purpose? Is this behavior what you really want to do in order to enjoy success and contribute to the world based on whatever your values are? And people back down real quick. They're like, crap, I'm spending all this time letting this person get under my skin. What a small life. This isn't what I want. And then we just start, talking through, well, how do you want to work together? And what are our agreements moving forward? And hold that new place as a place of hope, and how you can, celebrate together. And I've seen